During this session, I'm going to walk through a sample PEPPER for home health agencies to help you understand the statistics and what they could mean for you. The PEPPER is distributed as a Microsoft Excel workbook, and you will navigate within the PEPPER by clicking on the Worksheet tab along the bottom of the screen. When you open your PEPPER, the first page that you will see is this one. It's called the Purpose page. It will identify for you the most recent quarter of statistics that are summarized in the PEPPER. Remember, the PEPPER summarizes 3 calendar years of home health agency claims data statistics. So this report is through the 4th quarter of calendar year 2016. Here you will see your provider's CMS certification number, or PTAN, and your provider name. Here's a reminder that there is a PEPPER User's Guide available to help you with the Home Health Agency PEPPER. It's available at our website, and if you need assistance, you can contact us through the website on our Help Contact Us tab. Here you will see the version of the PEPPER. The version is always the most recent quarter of statistics that are summarized in the PEPPER. And here you will see your jurisdiction comparison group, your Medicare Administrative Contractor Jurisdiction Comparison Group. Remember, the Jurisdiction Comparison Group is comprised of all of the home health agencies that submit their claims to the same MAC for Medicare reimbursement. We also have a link to our website on the Purpose page, as well as a link to the Training and Resources page where you can get more resources and information. The next worksheet tab is called the Definitions tab. Here is where you can see the numerator and the denominator definition for each of the target areas in the PEPPER. So if you're curious about what does this numerator value represent or what does the denominator value represent, you can come to the definitions worksheet and you will see the definition for how that value is calculated. We also have added a few years ago hyperlinks on this page. So for example, if you want to go to the average case mix target area report, you simply click here and it brings you to the average case mix report. If you want to go back to the definitions worksheet, you simply click here and you are brought back to the definitions worksheet. Just a little navigational tool to help you get along better in the PEPPER. The next report is called the Compare Targets report. I like to refer to this as the heart of the PEPPER. It is the only place within the PEPPER that you can see your statistics for all of the target areas all in one place. Now it does include only those target areas for which your agency has what we call reportable data for the most recent calendar year. Reportable data, again, is a numerator or denominator count of at least 11. And again, it only represents the most recent calendar year, so for the 4 quarters ending calendar year 2016. So for this version of the PEPPER distributed in July of 2017, this report is representing statistics for calendar year 2016. On the report, you'll identify the target area by its name. We have a brief description of the numerator and the denominator. Here you'll see your target or numerator count or amount in, with regards to the Outlier Payments target area. Here will be your percent or rate. Remember, we calculate rates for 2 of the home health agency target areas. Here you will see your agency's national percentile. Here you will see your agency's jurisdiction percentile and your state percentile. And then where it's available, we display for you the sum of payments. This would be the total amount of Medicare reimbursement that your agency received for the numerator episode. So let's take a look at average case mix, the first target area here. This is calculating for us the average case mix for the episodes ending during this reporting period, and we're comparing the sum of the case mix weight for all those episodes ending in the calendar year, excluding lupus and PEPs, to the total number of episodes. Our numerator value is 8,789, which when compared to our denominator, which is not on this report, it's on the target area report though, we see that we have a rate of 1.05. Now remember when we talked about percents and percentiles and discussed how we calculate percentiles, we talked about how we sort, well, we take all of the percent or the rate for all of the home health agencies in the comparison group to calculate percentiles. So if we're calculating the national percentile, we take all of the rates for the home health agencies in the nation, we sort them from highest to lowest, and then we identify where your target area rate falls. This percentile of 61.1 tells us that 61.1% of all of the home health agencies in the nation have a lower rate than our agency does. Remember, in the PEPPER, we identify what we call outliers as when the agency's percent or rate is at or above the national 80th percentile. We identify those providers as outliers, and so the target area percent or rate would be identified in red bold font. Here we are at the 61.1 national percentile, so just above the middle of the distribution. And so our target area percent is not identified as an outlier. Our rate is not identified as an outlier. When we compare ourselves to all of the agencies that bill to our same MAC jurisdiction, we see that 47.7% of those agencies have a lower target area rate than we do. So we're just below the midpoint of that distribution. And when we compare to all of the agencies in our state, we are at the 85.5 state percentile. Now you'll notice there's a big difference in these percentiles, and many times that can be due to differences in patient population. Sometimes patient care practices also are different from one region of the nation to another. So you may expect to see differences in these national jurisdiction and state percentiles depending on differences in care patterns as well as patient population. And for the sum of payments, we do not calculate. It's not available for the case mix weight, which is the numerator. So let's take a look at a target area that's calculated based on that's reported as a percent. So episodes with 5 or 6 visits. Here we're looking at the proportion of episodes that have 5 or 6 visits as compared to all episodes. We see our numerator value here. Our target area percent is 11.0. You'll notice that it's identified in red bold font, which is an indication that in the PEPPER we are identified as an outlier. And indeed, when we look at our national percentile is 85.2. Since we are above the 80th percentile, the national 80th percentile, we are identified as an outlier. Our target area percent is displayed in red bold font. Now remember, the national percentile of 85.2 tells us that 85.2% of all the agencies in the nation have a lower target area percent than we do. So we're rather at the high end of that distribution. When we compare ourselves to all agencies in the jurisdiction, 84.3% of them have a lower target area percent than we do. And when we're compared to all agencies in the state, 81.1% of those have a lower target area percent. So for this particular target area, it's pretty consistent, the percentiles and where we stand as compared to those different comparison groups. And so just keep in mind that we're being compared to different groups, and so our percentiles will be different. Now for this target area, the sum of payments is calculated, and we can see that we received just over $2 million in reimbursement for these 1,106 episodes where there were only 5 or 6 visits. So I hope you can get a feeling now for how you can look at this report and identify those target areas at a glance for which your agency is an outlier for this particular time period. It's easy to see your percentiles and how extreme, perhaps how high your your percentile will be, in particular for the nation. The higher your national percentile, the closer to the top of that distribution your agency is. As well as keep in mind the sum of payments. Those target areas that have really large sums of Medicare reimbursement may merit additional attention, in particular if your percentiles look rather high. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at the statistics here. One other thing I should note. These percentiles here for national, jurisdiction, and state, these are your agency's percentiles. You will not see these values anywhere else in your PEPPER. You will only see them on the Compared Targets report. On some of the other reports, we identify the percent that is at the 80th percentile for nation, jurisdiction, and state. But this is the only place in the PEPPER where you are going to see your exact percentiles for those comparison groups. I should also mention that it's possible for some target areas that the state percentiles may not be calculated. The cells here may be blank. That would occur if there are fewer than 11 agencies in the state comparison group that have reportable data for that particular target area. So if you see a blank cell here in the state column, the reason is that the state percentiles are not calculated when there are fewer than 11 agencies that have reportable data for that target area in that time period. So let's take a look now at the target area reports. All of these reports are formatted in the same way. So once you get used to looking at interpreting these reports, I think you'll have a better feeling for how to interpret them throughout the PEPPER. In each of these reports, we have a graph at the top that displays your target area percent as these blue bars for the 3 calendar years. So what's nice about that is we can see if our target area percent may be changing over time, and we can also see how our target area percent compares to the 80th percentile for the national comparison group, which is the solid red line, the 80th percentile for the jurisdiction comparison group, which is the dashed line, and the 80th percentile for the state comparison group, which is the dotted red line. Below the graph, we identify the target area rate or percent. These are the values that are graphed as these blue bars up here. We also identify for you the numerator or the target count. So for this target area, this is representing the sum of the case mix weight for all of the episodes during the report period during this calendar year, excluding the lupus and the PEP. And then here is our denominator value, which is the total number of episodes that were paid during the report period, excluding the lupus and the PEP. We also are calculating for this target area the denominator, average length of stay. So this is the average length of stay for all of the episodes that were paid to the home health agency during that calendar year, excluding the lupus and the PEP. Below the home health data table is the comparative data table. Here we are identifying the rate that is at the 80th percentile for nation, jurisdiction, and state. These are the values that are graphed as these three red lines up here in the graph. Below the comparative data, we have included on all of the target areas suggested interventions when the provider is above the 80th percentile. These are some generalized suggestions that you could think about if you are at or above the 80th percentile for this particular target area. So remember, the average case mix target area is focused on the risk of overcoding on the OASIS, and that can lead to higher payments to the home health agency. So if you're an outlier for this target area, you might ask yourselves if you have a more compromised patient population and if you would expect to have a higher average case mix. If you don't, then it might be something that you want to take a look at a little bit more closely. The average number of episodes target area is one of those target areas that's also calculated and reported as a rate. Here we are calculating the average number of episodes that each beneficiary receives. Here we're focused on the risk that we're continuing services beyond the point where that's really necessary. So here for this target area, we see that this home health agency's rate has remained fairly stable over the past 3 years. They are well below the 80th percentile for jurisdiction, for state, and for nation. So they're not identified as an outlier for this target area. For this target area, in addition to the numerator and denominator count, we are calculating the average length of stay in days for the numerator, and we are also calculating the average payment. This is the average amount of Medicare reimbursement for these numerator episodes, as well as the total amount of Medicare reimbursement. If we take a look at the next report for episodes with 5 or 6 visits, we can see that our agency here had an increase in the number of episodes that have 5 or 6 visits in the past year, calendar year. So this might be something that they would want to come together within their agency and discuss and see if there's been some procedural change, if there's been some change in the patient population that resulted in an increase in episodes where there were only 5 or 6 visits completed, or if there's something else going on. I should say also that I always encourage providers, when they see something like this where there's an increase or a decrease in their target area statistics over time, I always encourage people to come together and think about what are some of the sources that could be resulting in this change. What are some of the causes? Has there been a change in patient population? Have we had some change in our referral sources? Have there been staffing changes, whether that be clinical, physicians? Have there been staffing changes in coding or billing? Documentation improvement efforts can also impact target area statistics at times. So think about any types of activities, external forces that could be resulting in the change in the statistics that you see in your PEPPER that would help explain. Or if you can't come up with any logical explanation and it just doesn't look right to you, I always encourage, take a look, do a review of records and claims and see if everything is being completed and accomplished in accordance with Medicare payment policy and as you would expect. This is the target area that is looking at non-LUPA payments. Now remember, for both the episodes with 5 or 6 visits as well as this target area, they're looking at the same issue but from different angles. To qualify for an HHRG, the beneficiary has to have at least 5 visits during a 60-day period. So for the 5 or 6 visits, the concern would be, did that beneficiary receive the 5th or the 6th visit just to qualify for the HHRG payment. Now, the LUPA payment, when the beneficiary does not receive at least 5 visits during the episode, then the home health agency receives a LUPA payment. And so the thought is that if there are agencies that have a lot of non-LUPA payments, that is, they have hardly any LUPAs, we're looking at this from the other perspective, which is you would expect that an agency would have some amount of LUPAs. I think the average at the national level is 8 or 9%. So you would expect that there would be some. And so this target area is looking at that financial incentive to have beneficiaries receive at least 5 or 6 visits in order to get that full HHRG payment. High therapy utilization episodes. This particular provider, we can see their target area percent just well below the national 80th percentile. It did decrease some over the past year, so the question that the agency might ask themselves is this expected? Did we take some steps to decrease our episodes that have high therapy utilization? Or did they have a change in patient population? Maybe they had a change in therapists. But this particular target area, of course, is on the issue, the continuous issue of therapy, because therapy drives a higher reimbursement. So that's the focus here. And then the outlier payments target area. This was a concern, I think, identified by the OIG, where there may be excessive amounts of outlier payments. And again, that can indicate that the agencies are working to enhance their reimbursement. So that's why this is a target area in the PEPPER. This particular provider has very low target area percent. It's decreased over the past 3 years, and so it would not seem to be a concern here. Now, this particular agency PEPPER that I'm using as a sample here does not have any of the target areas where there are no blue bars on the graph and where there are no empty cells. Remember that in the PEPPER we do not report the statistics. If the numerator or denominator value is less than 11, in that instance we suppress those statistics. And so for that target area and time period, there will be empty cells here for that particular time period, and there will be no blue bar on the graph. Within the home health PEPPER, we also have a couple of reports. We call them top reports, and so I'll review those quickly. This first report here is the top diagnoses report, and it identifies for you the top diagnoses for the most recent calendar year by total episodes. We're looking at the CCS diagnosis categories. So we'll identify for you, for your agency, the total number of episodes for that category, the proportion of episodes to total episodes, the number of visits, total number of visits for that category, and the average number of visits. This report will display up to 20 categories as long as there are at least 11 episodes. We have some summary statistics here on the bottom row for the top diagnoses and then all diagnoses. So we can see that the top 20 diagnoses reported here represent almost 70% of all of the episodes. And just a reminder that there have to be at least 11 episodes ending in the most recent calendar year for a diagnosis category in order for it to display. We use the principal diagnosis code for episodes ending in the most recent calendar year to collapse the statistics into general categories using the CCS software. And so again, this is for the most recent calendar year for your agency. We have a second report that summarizes for your agency the top therapy episodes for the most recent calendar year. And so we place those into 5 buckets. We have early episodes, 0 to 13 therapy visits, early episodes 14 to 19, late episodes 0 to 13, late episodes 14 to 19, and early or late 20-plus therapy visits. So for each of those buckets, we identify the total number of episodes for each of those broad categories, the proportion of all episodes, the number of therapy visits, and the average number of therapy visits. But then within each of these 5 categories, we're displaying the CCS diagnosis categories for those episodes, telling you the number of episodes and the proportion within that episode group, the number of therapy visits, and the average number of therapy visits. This is a supplemental report. It doesn't have any bearing on outlier status. Actually, both of these, the top therapy and the top diagnoses, these are supplemental reports. They're included for your information and for your use as supplemental reports. We also include in the Home Health Pepper duplicate or similar reports to the top diagnoses and the top therapy, but these represent the aggregate statistics for all home health agencies in the jurisdiction. So same information is reported, but it's at the jurisdiction level. So the top CCS diagnosis categories, total number of episodes, the proportion of episodes, the number of visits for that category, and the average number of visits. Summary statistics for the top 20 diagnosis categories and for all. And then again for that top therapy report, remember we had those 5 buckets. At the jurisdiction level, you can see the average, the number of episodes, the proportion, the number of therapy visits, and the average number of therapy visits. Again, this is summarizing statistics for all of the home health agencies in that MAC jurisdiction. So that's a review of the Home Health Pepper.